for the title I chose for this is "The Truth as We Know It," and as I was saying to them, Stan, the truth I'm looking for is the more broad approach, or whatever you want to call it, the 10,000 feet view of things. And we have a lot of things going on. It's almost too much to digest if you look at these as individual items. And we had gun control issues, and we have, of course, the abortion ruling, and we have the hearings in the House, and all this stuff going on. And what I'm trying to ascertain is, what is it that causes someone to accept one view or the other, and is there a connection between these things? If you're anti-abortion, are you necessarily pro-Trump? Or how do these things work? Because what I'm searching for is a way to influence people who don't agree with me at the voting booth because of some particular issue, and I guess to try to focus their attention on other issues like environment, for instance, as opposed to battling it out with them over an emotional issue like abortion. So that's what I'd like to address today. And Stan, I wanted you to comment. You had sent some additional things to the list I put out.
Sorry.
I wanted you to.
I wasn't trying to be flippant, but I was.
No.
I was getting a little carried away. I just sent something else to everybody. I'd like to recommend that we read a book, and it's called "How the South Won the Civil War: The Continuing Fight for Oligarchy, Democracy, and the Continuing Fight for the Soul of America" by Heather Cox Richardson, who is a historian and takes this from a historical perspective. Because I think what we see happening here is nothing new. It is baked into the founding of this country. It's baked into the Constitution. It's baked into the conflicts that were here from the beginning and have never been fully resolved. And so I think maybe, and I don't think persuading individual people is not going to do any good. I think that there's a systematic problem here that the Republicans have taken advantage of, and we can, there's a majority. I mean, how many times have you read? Most people want gun control. Most people want the right to abortion. Most people want, equal. All of these causes that we, I'm sure, agree on are what the majority want. Yet the minority rules, and so you can convince all the people you want, but if you don't have control of the state, the federal government, the Constitution, they could not decide. Well, I'll give you an example. Slavery had reached the conflict over slavery was reaching a height with the expansion of the United States in the early 19th century, and everybody was just clamoring, and people were saying, "Well, what's the Constitution say? What's the Constitution say?" Well, it's not clear. It's not clear. Obviously, the Constitution compromised so slavery could be continued, et cetera, et cetera. So everyone said, "We need to see how they were thinking it." And Madison had taken notes during the whole deliberation over the Constitution, and he had refused to publish them, and people were clamoring to see his notes because we could see what were these people thinking when they were trying to articulate how we should govern ourselves as a country. And people said, well, if we can get Madison's notes, we'll see, did they really want to preserve slavery and set up a system, where, et cetera, et cetera. And Madison's notes came out, and guess what happened? It just added to each other's side's arguments. There was nothing in Madison's notes that clarified what these things were saying. And so that, the only way we were able to get rid of slavery was to fight a war. And then but that didn't get rid of it. We had to pass amendments. We had to pass an amendment, the 13th Amendment, that said you couldn't enslave people except under the justice system. And of course, the South figured out a way to do that, and they made it. They kept slavery going. through wage slavery and those other things. And then I'm on a rant here. Anyway, the Federalists versus federalism, the big debate with the beginning of the Constitution was federalism versus states' rights. And what we have here is states' rights winning out. The Supreme Court said the states have to decide. The Constitution doesn't say it. We have to give it to the states. And so we have this division between the states that want abortion, the states that don't want people to have birth control, the states that don't, and even in those states, the other thing that the Constitution never could do is, how do we decide how to run the voting system? It's too complicated. We'll never get this Constitution written. We'll be fighting over how people should vote, forever. So let's just give it to the states to do. And what happens now? The states are able to control voting in such a way that the minority rules. So I think it's bigger than any one of us persuading any other individual as to what we can do. I don't know what we can do. I think it probably has to be some kind of political action. I think the only way we got Biden elected was because we got people to turn out to vote. So maybe if you can just get people to vote, I think if majority of people in this country want the woman's right to choose, the majority of people in this country want more gun control. I thought this was supposed to be a country where majority rules. It's not. It's because of these flaws
it's not a majority if you're doing it state by state.
Exactly, and that's
if you consider that to be,
people were eloquently saying, if we put states' rights over federal rights, we don't have a country. We just have a bunch of individual governments, with a patchwork of rules that, pretty soon we're going to have passports to get from one state to another, if this keeps up. I don't know, Michael. I don't know. I'm not very good at debate. I really don't like conflict. I'm not a very persuasive person, I think I would just get flustered trying to persuade anybody of anything. But
I guess it was in response to
the
Supreme Court ruling, but I heard a commentary. I think this was from the New York Times, and I don't remember, but the statement was that the Republicans take an issue and they work very hard to lay the foundation for change. And they convince people through, sometimes spacious arguments, but they convince people to go along with their crusade, in this case, to end abortion. Whereas Democrats only react when the Republicans screw up so badly that we can't stand it anymore. So I don't know. Paul,
so the Republicans, we're saying the Republicans are more strategic. They've been planning this for decades.
Well, they knew they couldn't get it until they got a Supreme Court majority. It's very simple. So they did everything they could.
But they were able to do a lot of damage with legislative majority. They started with They started securing legislative majorities in the states.
Yeah,
that's where they started, and then the Supreme Court majority just kind of put. But like the Supreme Court, they said that a black person was not fully human, and so therefore they didn't have the same rights as white people to vote, et cetera, because they're not capable of taking on this responsibility.
Yeah.
This was, Plessy versus Ferguson. This is the Supreme Court. This isn't anything new. The Supreme Court coming up with dehumanizing decisions, but you're right. The Republican, they took over state legislatures, so by doing that, they were able to make it difficult for any party to get a majority in the Senate. And so if you don't have a majority in the Senate and you have the stupid filibuster rule, Republicans either block what Democrats want to do or get what they want.
Okay. let's hear from Paul and Steve on this. Paul, I know we've discussed this kind of thing in the past, and I guess what I'm most concerned about right now is there a way to prevent, an all-out civil war where we are shooting each other in the streets? That's what I'm interested in, is how do we go? Is there a way to be persuasive enough to tell, to convince people that these issues are not worth killing our children over? Is there some hope? In other words, that's a hell of a question.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that, we argue over is it pro-abortion or anti? Is it anti-slavery or pro? Is it, do we do what Mitch McConnell wants us to do, and so on? I mean, I start with a position that it is utterly and totally about money. Period. Money, 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 money. And so the Republicans are much better at getting money than the Democrats. So, they and the ones that are really savvy are moving it out of the country. So, they would be perfectly willing to let the whole thing go belly up if they could just figure out how to keep the value of money together, which they won't be able to do. But you got it, that seems like to me, because the war between the states was being fought all the way from the beginning. I mean, it wasn't like we suddenly had one war and then quit. It started out as a war and it kept on. That's why they invented the police. So it's in order to go out and capture the people that had gotten away. I mean, you could look at that and see it over and over and again. We're doing exactly the same stuff. Stan, you're right. We're absolutely doing the same stuff we were doing then. Only we don't seem to have enough brains in our heads to do something even slightly different than what else is going on. So the answer is, Michael, if you have enough money, it's okay if we have a shootout. If we don't have enough money, we shouldn't have a shootout.
I just want to say that's another Supreme Court decision that made money so politically powerful. They said money is speech.
Yes.
And therefore you cannot restrict how much money people put into campaigns, because that would be restricting speech. That's another example of where the Supreme Court made a decision that was detrimental to the ideals of equal rights for all.
Paul, I always appreciate that perspective. And before we go on, I just happened to tune into the Pelican Brief, the film Pelican Brief. Is everybody familiar with that? John Grisham novel.
Oh, yeah.
He addressed that directly. 2 Supreme Court justices get assassinated, and everybody's looking at all the extreme groups.
There's an idea. Who's
doing this for what reason? And what it turned out to be was some rich motherfucker wanted to turn Louisiana upside down to get the oil. And so a lot of it is distraction. Steve, give us a perspective on this. Or should I be hopeful or in despair?
I think Stan is hitting on something that I've been concerned about for quite some time: the tyranny of the minority. Mm-hmm. We don't have representation of the majority opinions in a lot of these decisions, and I think Paul is right in that money is driving a lot of what the winning strategies that the Republicans employ are to be sure that their donors get what they want, whatever that may be. If you're an oligarch, I assume mostly what it is you want to be able to make more money. And I think I'll forward to everybody a YouTube video that I saw recently with an economist, DeLeo, I forget his name. Anyway, he does an analysis of how economies rise and fall, and the current situation, World War II, with the U.S. being the predominant global reserve economy, or I'm sorry, reserve money as the dollar, that he's predicting that won't last. That the signs are, the cycles that you look back in history, the cycles are the same. There's economic growth, and somebody gets an advantage one way or the other. The Dutch in the, well, I forget which century, 17th century, I guess,
Yeah.
had the global trade and the shipping. British over the British Empire, same deal. They controlled the shipping. Now we do since World War II, and we might have passed the peak here, and it's gonna be a big problem for the world economy. And I think we've seen signs of that with the global supply chain issues and so on. So yeah, there's some very big forces at work that we can't do much about. But I would like to see us have a voting majority that was expressing who should represent us, and get those things that that we think should be part of our civil society.
Stan, you mentioned the systemic problem, and that's something that I've attempted to focus on. The one thing that is obvious to me, South Dakota has 2 senators. South Dakota has a population less than Louisville. It doesn't deserve 2 senators, especially when 2 senators can determine who gets on the Supreme Court, what kind of laws pass or don't pass. So do we need to have a new constitutional convention? If we did, would that end up in a positive solution, or would this further enhance the power of those now?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a risky thing. I don't know. I think, well, I was just going to say before we go on, to be fair, money, it's not just the Republicans that are using money to control things. Democrats are taking money too. And a good example of this is in the lack of ability to get any kind of legislation passed that will help with the global warming and the environmental issue. And when you look at these major companies, they're giving money to everybody. And some of these companies are the same companies that are trying to obfuscate the truth about global warming and trying to create doubt in people. And the Democrats are taking that money just like the Republicans. So, there was an article in the New York Times, who's giving money that is obstructing attempts to legislate against global warming. Well, it's Toyota, it's of course the oil companies, and both sides are taking it. So again, that gets back to the problem of money is speech. Anyway, but your Constitutional Convention, I don't know. That's too big an idea for my little head right now. I can't imagine.
Well, I wonder whether.
First of all, I'm not sure if I can't see it. I can't see us starting a civil war over abortion. I'm sorry. It's a woman's problem. I'm being facetious, but
that's more than half of us.
Unless the women pick up the gun and start shooting, then we're in trouble. But I just if there would be some, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of issue. I don't know if there's any one single, unless it's maybe states' rights versus federal. Do we really want a federal government? Do we really want a United States? Or do we want a bunch of people in different areas doing whatever the hell they want to do and screw everyone else? Of course, and the abortion issue, some of these people, they feel like it's God's will that they fight against abortion, and there is a lot of scary stuff they're talking about. If they may get to a point where if a woman, a state may pass a law that if you live in a state and you go to another state to have an abortion, we can take you to court and we can take your doctors to court. it's going to get really, I mean, there's all these dire predictions of all the horrible things that are going to happen. But I don't know what, you know,
Well,
I don't know what, I don't know if there's any one issue that would rise to the occasion of people shooting at each other. And if it's not one issue, then what would be the, I mean, these militias, these armed militias that are out there now and are lean to the right, I don't think they know what the hell they stand for. You know, they just want to go out and play soldier and carry guns and support.
I think they want to find somebody to blame and kill them.
Yeah.
But who's to blame for the fact that my life isn't as good as I think it ought?
Yeah.
Paul, you were going to add something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I lost track of that. I mean, we keep running up against similar problems over and over again. Was like, well, we know that everything that is an issue from a political level has got to have some money problems that are plugged in there somewhere, and in a way that's not necessarily obvious. But the abortion thing could be the trigger that causes a big fight, even though it's not really, most people don't have that. I mean, they have a lot of people, there are people who have serious feelings about that, but not nearly in terms of the total number of people that have political issues. So, the real issue at this point is deciding who's got an idea that will carry into to be reelected with Donald Trump. I mean, I'm a stand. I'm really almost completely out of my depth on this at this point, and I just want to make sure that I can get away from somebody with weapons.
Well, one of the things that the right did to get to where we are now with the abortion issue is we're talking to people who are in the pro-life movement. They didn't talk to them about gun control. They didn't talk to them about the environment. They didn't talk to them about anything except abortion. When Democrats get together, they expect everybody to agree on every issue. If you're a Democrat, well, you are for abortion rights and you are for protecting the environment. You've got this whole litany of things that you believe in. That's what I was trying to articulate there. What is it that makes somebody identify themselves as a Democrat? And what I think we need to do is start isolating these groups and work with people like the environmentalists and just talk about the environment. Don't let abortion enter into the discussion, because that is what tears things apart. So, I believe in a fusion government where you have
common ground. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, yeah, but have lots of folks in lots of different parties who are politically activated by certain issues. I'm activated by environmental issues more so than I am abortion. I mean, nobody's for abortion, but I think that's somebody else's decision. It's not my decision to tell somebody to do that or not. But with the environment, your actions affect me. If you're dumping sludge in my creek, that affects me. So I think there are a lot of people who could be brought into a political discussion on a single issue, but who are unwilling to align themselves with gay marriage or whatever the other issue might be. And we fall into the trap every time for the Republicans to say, well, yeah, he's an environmental guy, but he's also pro-abortion, and he's this and that and the other thing. And they don't want to talk about the key issue. They want to distract you with something else. Does that make sense, Steve? I don't know if that is that.
I think that's exactly what happens.
I think too, though, I think for the average, I mean, I've heard anecdotal information of people saying, well, I like everything about this candidate. I mean, there are a lot of people for whom abortion is the only issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can talk to them about anything, and they can say, well, yeah, we need to do something about the environment. Yeah, we need something about this. And this guy does everything I want him to do, but he's for abortion, so I can't vote for him.
Yeah. And that even comes down to a local level, ironically. I don't want to vote for this guy for mayor because he's pro. What the hell's he got to do with it? It's not even his purview. But I don't know about, someone had raised the issue of should we have a United States? You know, is that the best way for us to organize? I mean, it was at the time of the founding of the Constitution because the threat was Great Britain was going to come back in and take over. So we had to hang together and we had to have some sort of unifying document or unifying principle that we could all get behind. The situation is entirely different now. And it could be, and maybe this abortion ruling will do this de facto. We're going to have 25 or 26 states who outlaw abortion and the others where it's going to be legal. So we're going to literally have blue and red. And maybe it's time to think about splitting the country into parts. Unfortunately for me, I live in Kentucky. So, you know, I think, you know, Louisville would have to succeed and join Massachusetts or something in order for me to be satisfied. But probably, you know, if I were in that situation, I may be compelled to, you know, to move to Oregon or someplace because I feel so strongly about it. So I don't know, but I feel like all of these things are coming to a point of resolution. And it must be what it was like in 1860, that we don't see a solution. You know, the line's been drawn, the die has been cast, and it's going to be a battle.
Yeah. Well, Obama, I think I've heard some very inspiring politicians like Cory Booker and Barack Obama comes to mind. You know, we're not red state, blue state. We're the United States of America. And they hold on to this ideal that we can do more, we can get more done if we can work together than if we are divided against each other. And I think that's the way the Republicans have been able to get power, divide and conquer. You know, is that what triangulation is? Let's find, or the wedge issue, you know, all of these, everybody agrees on this, but if we can find this one issue that will divide people, we'll push that. And that's what they've done. That's what they've done with abortion. That's what they've done with gun control. They find issues that motivate people to want to go out and vote that are very divisive.
Yeah.
And so you get more people willing to vote for state legislatures that are going to ban abortion, even though there's all this other stuff going on, because for some reason abortion is the most important thing that they need to deal with now.
Well, I don't know about how this plays out nationally, but in Kentucky, I guess the majority of the counties in Kentucky have leadership who are, I don't want to characterize all of them, but tend to be influenced by their local pastor and are, you know, convinced by pro-life, or pro-life forces. But when the election comes around, they're elected because of patronage. They're elected because of what they can do for somebody. And abortion is just
on a local level.
Yeah. There's, you know, I vote for this guy for financial reasons. And okay, he believes, you know, or he doesn't believe in abortion. Yeah, okay. But he's able to get into office because he's able to give patronage back to folks. And I don't know how that plays out in other states, but I would guess it's not, you know, not unusual.
No, I wouldn't think it is.
Michael, to your question about breaking up the United States, I would think it would help to look at what's in the advantage of the major corporations and the oligarchs. Would they breaking up the United States? If not, I think they put their power behind keeping the U.S.
I mean, you see a lot of corporations supporting liberal causes, you know, like transgender issues and stuff, and gay rights, because these people have money and they and we want them to buy our products. You know, I mean, look what happened when Florida passed the Don't Say Gay. I mean, Disney Corporation rose up. Wait, gay people spend a lot of money in Disney World. We're fine with them.
But you know, the thing that the thing that we haven't talked about is, you know, is the money itself, right? We are the reserve currency of the world still. It's a little shaky now, but that's still who they're still counting. Oil people buying and selling in dollars, not in whatever Israeli the other currencies floating around, Chinese in particular. But you know, this is a Civil War issue. You break up the money. Your money isn't any good anymore.
Mhm.
Oh, what do you mean my money's not any good anymore right now?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this could be really seriously bad in a real fast hurry.
Mhm. Well, the first Civil War was about money too.
The what?
Slavery.
Slaves were property. You want to take my property away from me? Yeah.
The whole economy of the South was based on that.
Right.
Sure.
But it was also it was a minority of people in the South. I think I brought this up. It was a minority of people in the South that wanted to succeed. It was not the majority of people, and so the minority had to take control, and they did it by controlling legislatures and then passing draconian laws, like you could be sentenced to death. First of all, they passed laws you can't talk about slavery, and then when they started succeeding, Georgia passed a law that said it was a minority of people, the oligarchs, the wealthy, who not many people own slaves in the South, just the really rich people, and so they had to convince the non-slave owners, all these different, if we have slaves, at least they'll do all the odious work that you won't have to do, and you don't want to get rid of anyway. They came up with all these specious reasons for why slavery benefits you, like it benefits us, the rich people, but it wasn't true at all, and they knew that, and so I don't know the particulars of how each state was able to get enough people to support the secession, but I know it was never a majority. Because a lot of people were not, they weren't benefiting from slavery. Just a few people were. So
Certainly the slaves weren't.
No, the slaves.
They were part of it. Yeah.
No, they weren't benefiting.
There's one other phenomenon that I think relates to this, and I'm curious to see what you think about this. I'll try to keep this very brief, but Marcia and I went down to Brandenburg, Kentucky for our anniversary. We stayed at a little B&B on a farm just outside of town. Normally when we go to towns in Kentucky, we like to go into the city center, the town hall, the local grocery store and mom and pop restaurant and so forth. So we drove through Brandenburg and we were looking for this, and it wasn't there. Finally dawned on me, Brandenburg was hit by the 1974 tornado, and most of that was destroyed. What is there now is what used to be the bypass. They still call it the bypass, but that is Brandenburg now. The old city is mainly deserted. There are a few buildings and so a park or two, but there's no commerce to speak of in what used to be the old town along the river. The real commerce is out on the bypass. Now, who owns all of that stuff? Well, it's Arby's and McDonald's and Rite Aid and right down the line. You ride down the street, you're not going to see anything there that you don't see in every other town in America. So rural America is changing in a way that gives corporations much more power and authority. The only way small community gets jobs is by bringing in a business from outside. In Brandenburg, they're opening a new steel plant. I don't know who owns the steel plant, but I don't think it's somebody who grew up in Brandenburg. Somebody from outside, maybe somebody outside the country, who knows. But that changing population in rural America is becoming increasingly controlled by corporate interests. that there's no power among local individuals, small city councils and so forth. What are they going to do when they're facing off against Halliburton or whoever it might be? So I just want to bring that into the discussion and wonder, you were looking for that one issue. I think that might have something to do with this, is who's controlling this economy? You know, what do we have? Who decides whether a plant is going to just pick up and leave? You know,
isn't there a whole genre of dystopian literature where people become ruled by corporations?
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, I'm not a big reader of dystopian literature. There's enough dystopia in reality, but I think that's that's something that's an idea that's out there. And again, we're back to this thing of, I read somewhere that said some democracies don't allow lobbying. You can't go around, trying to tout your cause with legislatures and offering them country. They don't allow that. They didn't know. They have to decide on the basis of what's good for the majority, not what good for your company. Well, my company's going to provide. No, that's not, here we are. I mean, well,
my contention would be we're moving in that direction, where the key organizational unit in the society is the corporation. Which corporation do you adhere to? It's not just, a Ford Motor Company. It's all of the subsidiaries and all of the related entities. Ford has a big presence here in Kentucky and has 2 large plants, but they also have hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers throughout the state who are dependent upon those plants being located here. So everybody's interest is to keep Ford happy, and Toyota and some of the other, big entities. So really, corporations, if you talk about raw power, corporations have a hell of a lot more power than any other entity, any state legislature or even federal government. They have the real power. And maybe that's the issue that, I don't know, does it require too much education? Do people have to know more in order to see, the things we're talking about?
I think that's one of the problems is that in our contemporary society, there are too many distractions. There are too many other things to occupy your mind and to enjoy than to think about politics and think about who's moving the levers behind the scenes. You've seen that movie Don't Look Up, right?
Yeah.
That's, keep people distracted. It's not just the politics of it, but it's also the, am I going to watch a video about the economic system? No, I'm going to watch a video about Beyonce or something, because that's much more interesting, I don't know.
And then prohibit in a public school from talking about those things either, education would be to increase the awareness within the population, but education is being challenged that, not just on critical race theory, but on a lot of other areas, sex education being one of them, and
history
and so forth.